Hello, everyone. Today we are joined by Alisha Moopen. Alisha is the Deputy Managing Director of Aster DM Healthcare. Having joined the company as a director in 2013, Alisha is responsible for overseeing the strategic direction and development of the company, as well as expansion of the group into new markets. Alicia is also part of the World Economic Forum as a young global leader and was named one of the top 100 world's greatest leaders in Asia and GCC in 2018 by Asia One magazine. Alicia graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration from Ross Business School, University of Michigan. Alicia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Saeeda. So good to see you and have this conversation. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Alicia, you've had a very interesting and inspiring journey. And you started out more on the business side and you are now heading up Aster DM. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what were some of the pivotal moments and what helped you get to where you are today.
Sure. No, so happy to walk you through at least some of the highlights. So I am a Dubai raised kid, love Dubai. This has been home. Um, I think the best thing about being in this city is it really kind of gives you the kind of courage to dream big and to sort of think that whatever you set your mind at, you can do. So I think that really kind of played a big role in my life, my parents' life, who came here as expats 35 years ago now. So for me, one of the key things was always seeing how this city has done and how it has kind of moved over the years when I was growing up and seeing what my father built over the last 20, 30 years. Um, I grew up here and then went across to the US to study. I kind of nurtured a dream to be a doctor when I was little. And I remember wanting to do that when, watching my father see his patients. And, he used to see sort of 1,800 patients in a day. And that was kind of a constant life for us. And you would hear about the patient stories, you would hear about, the struggles and the medical kind of challenges people go through. But being a girl, my mom was always worried about this medical side, which kind of consumes you because it's so overwhelming and the requirement was so big. So I kind of got a bit steered off track from being in the medical field. And I remember sort of going and doing business, like you mentioned, and I took finance, accounting, I did a bit of
Mhm.
literature, science. I remember going into philosophy classes, and, I was decent in maths and accounting, and I kind of went down that route. Um, and then I kind of qualified as a chartered accountant, was working with Ernst& Young for many years. Great organization, great set of people you meet there. But somewhere I just didn't feel fulfilled. I still didn't feel like I was doing anything impactful enough. Kind of seeing the balance sheets balance was really, I mean, there was nothing to like write home about, or so it was good because it was a nice, vibrant environment, but still nothing I felt powerful enough or impactful enough that kind of made me feel very happy. It was at that point my son actually had an accident, and I had to kind of be in very close quarters with healthcare again. I was in and out of doctors' offices, and he had to go through many surgeries, and it was probably the most stressful time of my life. And it was almost a year where he had to have multiple surgeries, and we had to kind of keep going up for the follow-ups. And that's when I kind of realized that my calling was always in healthcare, and I needed to somehow be part of that system, because the whole idea of being able to touch people's lives so positively, that was what resonated with my heart and my being. And I realized at that point, like, I would be doing a disservice to myself and injustice to myself to keep kind of shoving that voice down and kind of trying to mute it, because it always was there in the back of my head and it came back again. And I remember at that point, I just had two little kids and toying with the idea of going back to med school and being a doctor. And then I realized maybe that's not very practical because it would be a bit of a challenge. But I kind of dedicated myself or I at least committed myself to going back to healthcare because I felt that's what connected to me. So that was a key moment for my life because I realized that over the course of your life, somehow people have a tendency to try and steer you in the direction they think is best for you. So when you're trying to drive the car, you cannot have two people driving the car or three people driving the car. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, family members, even with the best of intention, try to sort of steer you in whatever they think is best for you. So I felt like it took me almost 30 years, but at 30, I decided, you know what? This is what I want to do. This is what I want to commit myself to. So that was a key moment. That's when I came back to Dubai, sort of joined Aster. And honestly, I go to bed every night, at least feeling fulfilled and happy. So I think that was I could have probably taken that decision 10 years before that, but it took me a while to get around to finding my own voice and finding my own purpose.
Yeah, very nice. And look, I hear you, right? There is the right time for everything, and you have to follow your own rhythm. And sometimes some things come sooner, sometimes some things come a little bit later.
Yeah.
But absolutely, at the end of the day, things have to work at your time, as per your rhythm. In fact, one of the things that you've mentioned in the past is that you said that it's important for people to stay true to themselves and to follow their hearts. And quite often, what will happen is people will try to hijack it along the way, but everybody has their own journey. Tell us what you mean by that.
So it's similar to sort of this background I was telling you about my story, right? I do think a lot of times you start getting diverted in different directions, and for us, I think at the end of the day, there is our gut feeling and instinct on what works for us, what drives us, what suits us. So it's so important to be aware of that voice for yourself. And if you're not, and if you're not in tune with that and in sync with that, and if you don't have the courage to trust that own voice, you end up letting everyone else make those decisions. And it might not even be intentional from someone else's, but you're so scared of making that own decision for yourself, you let other people take over your life. And then you either, you might revel in it, or you might be a victim saying that, hey, somebody else told me to do this. So one of the key things that I always have to remind myself is at the end of the day, you each one of us have to take that ownership and accountability for our own decisions. And whilst you will take inputs and advice and guidance from everyone around you for various reasons, how is it that you make that final decision yourself, and you're completely in sync and aligned to it? Because when you do that in a half-baked manner, I think things just don't go the way it's supposed to.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Look, one of the things that you've been dealing with over the last year is you, with your team and the organization, have been at the forefront of getting through the pandemic and having to deal with managing the pandemic, helping people, but at the same time also making sure that the organization is such that it is best suited to deal with what happens once we are beyond COVID, uh, given all the changes that are happening. What are some of the ways in which the pandemic has fundamentally impacted the way in which you do your business?
So it's, of course, been the most painful year for all of us. And you have everyone talking about reflections and thoughts and how to manage this crisis, but actually in healthcare there was no time to think about anything because you're literally in the eye of the storm. So every day you're just faced with the disease, you've got the patients who are coming up, you've got your own staff who are getting infected, and you're just doing. There is no time to sit back and think. So what I mean, I think one of the biggest strength that we came out as an organization was just kind of learning on the go as quickly as possible. How do you figure out that, okay, today you realize that these are the protocols you live with, but how do you pivot in 3 days' time when you've got a new set of directions and guidance that's coming from CDC or your regulatory authority? So I think in healthcare, despite the incredible work that as an industry we do, it is very it is very slow to move, because you keep waiting for for new information. You wait for validation, you wait for verification, whereas with COVID, you just realize that there's no time to do all that. We're going to have to move much faster because there was no other option. So I think it just kind of accelerated the industry overall. Everyone just had to move at a supersonic speed, because you not only had to deal with COVID, you had to deal with your own staff with COVID, and you had to deal with the regular patients who had to continue with their regular care as well. So I think it made us realize that at the end of the day, it's all for any organization. It's a
Mm.
relationship you have with the people within the organization and those around you. We had to take very tough decisions on um, whether it was austerity measures. How do you go into people who are working harder, putting their own lives at risk, not even able to see families, and say that, hey, can you take 20, 30, 40% pay cuts? Because even though we're doing much more work, we were there was all our bread and butter work had gone for a toss. And we had all our staff who came together and actually said, you know what, as an organization, you've always given when the company was doing well. So yes,
Yeah,
as an organization, when we're suffering, we'll all stay collectively together to manage this
yeah.
crisis. So how do you stand tall in any crisis and in any storm? I think there's so much that goes on in what's happened before as well. So the relationship that we've built with our staff and our employees kind of helped us sustain and survive during this crisis, because we all stayed together as a team. We said, this is bad. We'll all take some small sacrifices together to make
Yeah.
sure that we survive. And we don't know if this is going to last 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, and we still don't know, because after the first wave, we said, hey, we did this, we're good, we're in a good place. And then 4 months later, we're stuck with, wave two. And then we don't know, we're hearing about wave three again, right? So I think the whole ability to make sure that there's that transparency within the organization, you're talking about what is going on. And if there is no information flow that's happening, and people don't understand how it's impacting the organization in different
Mm.
ways, nobody can come up and support. So that's something which has really helped us. And on the other side, the model has changed significantly. Healthcare has transformed. I mean, our doctors were 60s, 70s. They never wanted to touch an iPad or a computer. Suddenly, we're like,
Yeah.
I want to see my patients. Give me a way, give me a method. And
Yeah.
you could go online and you could continue seeing all your patients online just like you did before. So we started seeing this massive shift to the online care, which otherwise everyone had estimated 5, 10, 15 years. So that's been a
Yeah.
brilliant move, because I think healthcare has been so behind as far as that transformation, and that hybrid model was, shifting to that hybrid model was. So that's something which is quite positive and a silver lining that we see in healthcare. And I truly think when we look back at COVID, it would have been that game changer for healthcare, where things became more accessible and it becomes more affordable because of that shift.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying makes so much sense, right? I think COVID has absolutely been an accelerator for so many digitization across so many
Yeah,
different industries. And
yeah,
I imagine healthcare is at the forefront of that. One of the things that you mentioned resonated, right? Which is around how do you manage the morale of the employees of the organization? And so many leaders that we've had discussions with have said that very openly, that for them, it was a concern. With everything that was going on, the emotional well being and the longer term impact of the pandemic on the morale of the employees was absolutely a big concern. Is this something that you also saw in Aster, and how did you, if so, how did you deal with it?
this was the toughest thing, right? Say that it was painful. I mean, we had nurses who couldn't go back and see their families for weeks, because we were doing a rotation, where we'd have one cohort working in the COVID ward for 3 weeks, to avoid as much cross infection as possible. We had doctors who had just had babies, who got infected and then couldn't be with their newborns, we had to make sure that we're utilizing the PPEs as effectively as possible. So people would not even drink water, because then that would mean going to the bathroom and increasing your risk of infection. So it was so traumatic, and it still continues to, right, put so much disproportionate stress on the healthcare system and healthcare workers, right?
Mm.
I think as an organization, we've again tried our best to be there as much as possible. We realized that a lot of our staff, their partners, have been laid off. So they've been so much a double whammy impact as well. So we created some funds within the organization to help families where there's been a disproportionate impact. So we set up a compassionate fund called Just Ask. So how do you support your own kin? How do you support your own, your own team members who have been hit harder than others? Whether so we so little things that make that difference, right? Because
Mm.
some people don't even want to reach out for that help because they all know everyone's been affected. But we try to create some mechanism and some programs which gives that courage and confidence to people to say, hey, it's okay, we're all being hit, but do come forward and seek that support, because unless people are asking, nobody ever even knows.
Mm.
We set up a lot of mental health support, at least to call in, to have those conversations, to have those dialogues. How do
Yeah.
you create those safe spaces? A lot of times you're so busy again doing things, you're not really there for people. So we actually set up a lot of uh, bots. We set up our counselors. We set up mental health support to say just have those conversations, because all of us are feeling stressed. All of us are feeling like our survival is at stake. And you cannot be in that stress induced state for a year, 2 years. I mean, how is that possible? We will end up burning ourselves out. So
Yeah.
we kind of encourage also people, when the wave one kind of died down, we said take some time off,
Yeah.
because we don't know if this is going to come back. So we use like November, December, and we said, listen, this is the time. Take time off, because we don't know what's going to come in 2021. We all know we want to forget this year, but we might not be able to forget it as
Mhm.
quickly as we hope. So, how do you also plan that when you're seeing some lull, encouraging your team to take that time out, have those conversations, creating these pools and these funds to help those who've been affected worse than others? Those were some of the key things that we did as an organization, and sort of giving that comfort, and also giving our staff some safety net, right? Saying that, okay, you're going to be safe no matter what, because a
Yeah.
lot of times people are scared. Am I going to get laid off? Is there going to be other things that are going to come up? So having these conversations, which are really painful, uh, I think just creating as much of comfort for our staff from a
Mm.
safety perspective, both financial and physical. I think it started with the physical safety with COVID, but then it really had to quickly move over to a emotional safety and financial safety as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense, right? It's been a tough year. I think it's been a very tough year for all of us, and we've all had to struggle with many, many choices, many, many decisions that we never thought we would be making at this point. And, I know certainly you've had to make more than your fair share of a lot of those decisions. And when we've talked in the past, one of the things you've always said is it's important to think through them, it's important to have your facts, but at the same time, you do not want to be caught in the analysis paralysis world either. How do you balance that? How do you make such frankly far reaching decisions that will have an impact on so many people's lives in so many different ways, but do it in a way that's thoughtful, but at the same time quick, because we don't have the luxury of time? How do you manage that?
So I think we realize that the world is moving at such a fast pace right now, and we end up becoming as a race, saying that the data is there, you've got so much information, you can make the smartest decision. But things are changing so rapidly that a decision you make today may not make sense tomorrow. So
Yeah.
one of the things as leaders and as organization we're trying to make sure is we need to make the best decision we can with the current information, of course, but there is an issue with not making a decision. There is a cost of it. A lot of times you're waiting for so much information to make a decision that the time value of not making that decision can really end up hurting, your team, your organization. So you have to make decisions in a time bound manner. But what we always try to encourage is don't be wedded to a decision. Don't be so married to the decision that tomorrow when new information comes to light and you have to pivot, you're too scared to do that because you've already made this decision. You
Yeah.
make the best decision knowing what you know today, because you don't know, you have no clue what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, none of us are psychics and we don't know how things are going to play out. We're doing the best we can with today's information, and as long as you're not married to that decision, and tomorrow or day after when those circumstances change and things look like it could go pear-shaped, you pivot and you move quickly to another track that will make sense depending on the information that's now come to light. I think we're in such uncharted territory right now that you cannot say, hey, I decided to go down this path and now I cannot shift gears. No, there's nothing like that, right? We just the realization that we're on this journey of learning, and there's nothing wrong with moving once you know that something's not working out. I think that's very important. And I think it's especially important for women because a lot of times you're so busy deciding the perfect decision, so busy making sure you're not making a mistake, that
Yeah.
we freeze about making that decision, and it's better to hand it over to someone else or say that I'll do it later. But I think that's something which we have to also consciously as women kind of be comfortable saying that, hey, I need to make a decision today because I don't have all the time in the world, and if this decision is not the best decision for tomorrow, I'll change it as I need to.
Yeah. Look, I think those are very wise words. There are few decisions that cannot be changed
Unwound,
later.
yeah, absolutely.
So, absolutely. We spend way too much time worrying about things that at the end of the day, frankly, can be handled. So, couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more. Alicia, what advice would you like to give to some of the younger women and men that are just starting out their careers?
Um, so I think for women, one of the things I always think about is, we always talk about the struggle to have it all. We want to have a good career, we want to have a good family life, we want to have our
Hmm.
friends and balance of all of that. And every time, I see so many young women asking, can we have it all? And I mean, I truly, truly do believe we can have it all. I don't think you can have it all at the same time. I think it is impossible, and it's too much pressure that we put on ourselves trying to do it all at the same time. There is a point in time when career has to take the center stage, and there is a point in time when your family has to take the center stage. So it really is important for us to make sure we're not putting everything at the front all at the same time, because that will create way too much pressure for ourselves, and we can't do justice as we would have liked. Um, for men and women, I truly believe in the law of attraction. How is it that you make things happen? You've got to believe in yourself. You have to have the confidence in what you aspire for. And if you put in the efforts, you put in the hard work, and you're doing what you need to do, I truly believe that the universe gives you what you're dreaming for.
That's excellent advice. Thanks a lot, Alicia, for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Saida. Lovely catching up.